February and March are the best time to start your first seeds for spring planting. What can you plant now? When should you start your seeds? Which vegetables can be direct sown? And which ones are better to buy as seedlings? Hi everyone, I'm Zilly. Today let's talk about the things you need to know for spring planting. First, let's discuss the timing for starting seeds. It can vary slightly depending on your planting zone. You can refer to your local planting schedule. The planting dates recommended in my videos are based on my location in planting zone 6. Generally, for one zone higher, you can start about 1 to 1.5 weeks earlier. This year, North America has had unusually cold weather, so the seed starting time needs to be adjusted accordingly. It's especially better to wait for vegetables like squash and melons until after April to even consider starting them. But even in the depths of winter, in the snowy month of February, there are still many vegetables that need preparation. Otherwise, it can affect your harvest. 1. Sprouting root vegetables. Ginger has a long growth cycle. Starting it earlier can lead to a bigger harvest. Late January to early February is a good time to start sprouting ginger. February is also a good time to start sprouting sweet potatoes. Cut open a sweet potato from the grocery store. You can eat the middle part first to see if you like the variety, and use the two ends for sprouting. For potatoes that have already sprouted, if they're egg-sized, you don't need to cut them, bury them whole directly. Larger potatoes can be cut into smaller pieces. Potatoes like cool weather and are cold hardy, but their leaves cannot tolerate frost. So you need to wait until after the last severe frost to plant them in the ground. You can plant them in batches for a staggered harvest. If you like growing taro, buy some small taro corms with eye buds from the supermarket. You should also start sprouting them in February. Sprouting yams can begin in March. I've done comparison experiments for sprouting and found that using the damp paper towel method is faster and more intuitive than using sand or soil. Yacon also has a relatively long growing period. In planting zone 6, you can start it indoors in late February. During this indoor period, you don't want it to grow too fast because the leaves aren't frost tolerant. You also need to wait until after the last frost to transplant it. Starting cold hardy vegetables indoors, or some small seeds with good cold hardiness, are suitable for direct sowing and don't require pre-sprouting. For example, arugula and shepherd's purse. You can scatter the seeds as soon as the soil is workable. If your garden space is limited, you can consider scattering shepherd's purse seeds in the area where you have garlic growing. This is because garlic roots grow deeper than shepherd's purse roots, making it a good companion planting combination. Spinach seeds can also be direct sown in batches until the end of March. If you have fewer seeds, you can sprout them first before planting. I found that when soaking seeds, adding a little hydrogen peroxide can greatly increase the germination rate and speed. If you have a cold frame or greenhouse, you can start sprouting and planting fava beans in mid to late February. If you don't have protective measures, you can wait 2 weeks and start in early March. Fava beans can be direct sown, but starting them indoors can lead to earlier flowering and fruiting, helping them avoid the peak season for aphids. Peas generally have fewer pest and disease problems, but you still need to get the timing right. If you plant them too early, the seedlings can be damaged by frost. If you plant them too late, they won't produce many peas. For example, the snow peas need a growing period of over 70 days. In North America Zone 6, direct sowing in mid to late March for a harvest starting in June is a good plan. If you hope to harvest earlier, or if you're worried about animals stealing the seeds, then you can start them indoors in late February or early March and transplant them a month later. Spring is also a good time to plant onions. The germination rate of onion seeds decreases significantly after a year, so if you have onion seeds on hand, use them as soon as possible. Cilantro is cold hardy but bolts easily, can be planted in batches. If you prefer a more laid-back approach to gardening, you can let your cilantro flower and let it self-seed. Then, year after year in spring and summer, you'll have cilantro to eat. Some of the most worthwhile vegetables to plant in spring are the lettuce family. Generally speaking, darker colored varieties are more cold hardy. For example, purple stem lettuce and red leaf lettuce. If your indoor seed starting conditions aren't great, you can try direct sowing lettuce seeds in a cold frame, or try the winter sowing method using milk jugs. Before scattering the seeds, spread a layer of good quality seed starting mix or potting mix on the surface. Last year, I tried the winter sowing method for various vegetables. I found that it worked well for lettuce family. Vegetables, however, for the cabbage family, they were more prone to bolting. Of course, if you have limited stem lettuce seeds, it's best to start them indoors and pot them up into individual cells early, giving each seed a chance to grow into a healthy, strong seedling. Broccoli is often thought of as a vegetable that takes up a lot of space for a small harvest. However, broccolini is a hybrid of broccoli and Chinese kale, gailan. It has a longer harvest period and a better flavor. Start seeds indoors in mid to late February, transplant them outdoors from mid-April to early May. They are quite susceptible to cabbage worms. In spring, when you see cabbage white butterflies starting to flutter around, it's time to cover them promptly with insect netting. 3. Nightshade family crops. Under most home seed starting conditions, peppers and eggplants need about 8 to 10 weeks from sowing to being ready for transplanting. If you plan to transplant them in mid-May, then you need to start the seeds in late February or early March. If you're using old seeds, germination might take a week or more, so you'll need to start even earlier. This is especially true for hot peppers, which require higher temperatures for germination and growth. You'll need to use a heat mat. If you have a good quality heat mat and grow lights, the time needed for starting can be significantly reduced. Starting tomatoes typically only require 6 to 8 weeks indoors. Generally, you start them in March. But if you have a favorite variety and want to harvest a bit earlier, you can also start them in mid to late February. When the time comes, you can move them up from small pots to larger ones. And you can also propagate more tomato seedlings by taking cuttings from the side shoots. Nightshade plants need a long time indoors, and there are many varieties to choose from. You don't need to start every single one yourself, especially for some well-known hybrid tomato varieties. I usually go to the garden center in April and buy a 6-pack of seedlings. Then I transplant them into individual pots at home. I keep one for myself and share or trade the extras with friends for other varieties. For example, Sungold is a hybrid variety. Buying seedlings from a good nursery is often more reliable and less work than ordering seeds online. Because the nursery has already done the homework on the seed sources, the chance of getting a mislabeled or fake variety is smaller. Finally, reminder, don't be too eager to start squash. Melons and cucumbers for most starting in April is plenty of time. In the past couple of years for starting squash, I've adopted a method focusing mainly on direct sowing with protection and starting a few backups indoors. This has greatly reduced the pressure of indoor seed starting and also lessened the workload of moving plants for hardening off. Alright, that's all for today's video. I'll see you in the next one.